Bobby Monks is a Toronto woman who runs her own dog walking business, which she advertises through the Instagram account @BobbyWalksDogs.
That's Kathryn Blaze Baum, an investigative reporter with The Globe.
So she was in her kitchen cooking dinner one night. Chicken's on the stove, her dogs are barking, her son walks through the door. It's your typical weekday evening domestic chaos. And that's when she gets a WhatsApp message from a friend that she'd been messaging with earlier in the day. So it sort of seemed entirely plausible that this friend would be messaging her. And the conversation picked up where they had left off. But then she received a link that was supposedly going to help her friend activate his Instagram account. Instead, her own Instagram account got hacked. Distracted, she had clicked on a phishing link. And this all happened, she said, in a matter of seconds.
Having your account hacked is always a hassle. Usually, you have to reach out to the company to try and regain access. But if you've tried getting back into a Facebook or Instagram account, platforms owned by the company Meta, chances are you may have run into a lot of difficulty. Those who've been locked out of their accounts often report not being able to regain access through Meta's regular customer support. But there is another way in, if you're willing to pay the right price. Kathryn looked into this, along with The Globe's cybercrime reporter, Alexandra Posadzki. Today, Kathryn's here to talk about how this backdoor process works, how Meta is cracking down on it, and where this all leaves users who've had their accounts compromised. I'm Menaka Raman-Wilms, and this is The Decibel from The Globe and Mail. Kathryn, thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So we just heard about Bobby Monks in the intro. How important was Instagram for Bobby?
So in speaking with Bobby, I could tell it was important, just as it is to most people who have social media. For her, it was the personal reasons, her own content, but also it was important to her from a business perspective. While she didn't have a huge following, she was growing her online engagement and didn't want to lose several years of content.
Okay. And so we just heard that, of course, she did get hacked. Her Instagram account got hacked. And so what are these hackers actually doing with these accounts once they get control?
So in some cases, they are holding the accounts for ransom. They're asking for several $100s. If you don't send me the money, I'm going to disable your account forever, or I'm going to sell it on the dark web. And then all of your, personal details is going to be out there for somebody else. In the case of Bobby, she wasn't asked to pay any sort of ransom. And instead, the hacker seemed happy to just use her access to her followers in order to reach their next potential victims. They were impersonating her and then messaging her followers to see if they could get another hack.
In general, Kathryn, when people have their account hacked, what are they supposed to do? What is the process that you're supposed to follow with Meta?
So in general and in principle, you're supposed to fill out online submissions requesting assistance. And as part of that sort of assistance request, you may be asked to submit official IDs or selfies or video selfies to verify your identity. And then you wait. And based on my conversations with people, you wait and you wait and you wait. And you might not hear anything at all. People who pay for Meta Verified, these people pay somewhere between, say, $15 to $120 per month.
Wow.
They're supposed to have access to Meta agents through email or chat so that they can flag their concern that way. I did speak with someone who tried to sort of go through the Meta Verified process, and she didn't find it particularly useful in that instance either.
Okay, so there is a process that you're supposed to follow. I imagine, did Bobby try these things? Like, where did she end up?
Oh, she tried and she tried and she tried. In her words, she said she sent like dozens of online submission requests and emails, I'm not sure to whom. She heard absolutely nothing. In her words, she was met with a brick wall. Wow. It was radio silence. She found it super stressful and was getting increasingly frustrated. And the word she used when I asked how Meta had handled her requests was useless.
Wow. Yeah, I imagine that's really stressful and kind of worrying for people, right? Because this is your account, this is your information, and now you have no control over it.
Absolutely. You've lost access to it and you don't have any visibility into whether anyone is paying attention.
Okay, so Bobby seems to hit a brick wall here when this happens. What did she do next?
So she's out and about. She's walking the dogs for her dog walking business, and she's chatting with people in the neighborhood, and word gets around and everyone's talking to her about her account got hacked. And she realizes that everybody either had been hacked themselves or knew someone who had been hacked or knew someone who knew someone. And the through line in all of these stories was that nobody had been able to get help.
Wow.
So then someone suggested a different route. They said, talk to a guy named Mo. He'll take care of it for you.
Huh.
Mo. So she reached...
Mysterious guy named Mo. Okay.
Exactly. So she reached out to this mysterious Mo, who told her he had a contact inside Meta who was willing to take money under the table to expedite her account recovery. So to be clear, this Mo did not work at Meta, but it seemed he knew someone who did. And within about 12 hours, she got her account back. It cost her $1,170.68, and that's according to an invoice that I saw, which described the service as hacked IG and FB recovery.
Okay, so interesting. So she tries to go through this normal process with Meta, not getting anywhere. She contacts this mysterious Mo, and within 12 hours and more than $1,100 later, she's got her account back.
Correct.
Okay, what do we know about what happened here, Kathryn? Like, what was going on behind the scenes?
That was the question I had too. And so for the sake of explaining this process or this arrangement, and for the sake of our readers, I've dubbed people like Mo brokers.
Okay.
So brokers are people who have connections inside Meta, who have access to an internal account recovery mechanism known as OOPS for online operations. So OOPS is meant for employees or contractors to seek assistance with their own accounts or those of their family and friends.
This is an ironic name, I just had to say.
It certainly is. And instead of using it solely for themselves or for their family or friends, some of these Meta employees or contractors are abusing the mechanism for under-the-table profit. So brokers find users who need help and ask them for the relevant account information. And then they pass that information to their Meta contact, who will then file an internal ticket. So this Meta contact isn't themselves recovering the account, but they're submitting an internal request, which then expedites the process. So they charge the user a fee. Our reporting showed that that fee was typically somewhere in the order of $1,000 to $2,000, but in one case as much as $6,000 and even more. And they divvy up the fee, which is sent through international money transfer or cryptocurrency exchange. And we also learned that these brokers and Meta insiders take steps to avoid detection. So if you want, I can tell you about a text that I reviewed that was sent from a broker to one of the Meta users.
Yeah, please. Yeah.
So this Meta user says in this text message that his network had recovered dozens of accounts in a single week, and they needed to slow down to avoid drawing the company's attention. So here's a quote from the text. After getting 60 plus assets back last week, we saw some flags in the security code in the internal resources we use and have paused submissions for the last 2 days on all new cases.
Okay, so essentially there's a broker outside Meta, then there's someone inside Meta, and they seem to be using this process that is supposed to be used for family and friends. So basically just pushing these tickets kind of up the top of the line then so they actually get seen.
That's correct. And Meta is explicit that this kind of internal appeal recourse is not meant for people that the employees and contractors don't know.
Okay, but it sounds like, I mean, from what you're saying there, they're quite busy because there's high demand for this.
That's correct.
How common is this? I mean, it sounds like it maybe happens more than we would like to hear it happens.
So we don't know how often people get their accounts hacked, and we don't know how often they are seeking out the services of these brokers who collude with insiders. On the hacking side of things, we don't have a good figure because most people don't tend to report a hacking to law enforcement. So any official figure significantly understates the problem. So I asked Meta how many accounts are hacked or disabled for purported community standards violations each year, but they didn't provide that figure. I think we can say with confidence, though, that it's a big problem. Mo, for instance, told Bobby he was getting requests for help every day. And it's clear from interviews, online forums, and court records that people are getting hacked or having their accounts otherwise disabled, and they're not getting help from Meta in a prompt fashion.
So what did you find out through your reporting? Like other people who are in this similar situation, what kind of action have they been taking? So
people, go public with their frustration. Maybe they air their grievances online to the media or to community chat groups or on Reddit. But they've also shown up at Meta offices crying and begging for help. And they've also taken their grievances to court. So I found court cases involving many people who had complaints with Meta, including a yoga business owner who literally used the word beg in an email to Meta that she submitted as evidence. It says, "I beg you to activate our account as soon as possible." And in another email, she said, it's like a long torture. Wow. And then early last year, there was a youth leader in the Seventh-day Adventist Church who sued Meta in New York State court after her Facebook account was disabled. And she sent the company a handwritten note by fax, which I saw as part of the court filing. And it said, please be advised that I have tried every appeal to reinstate my FB account. I am hoping you can direct this to a human being. And it left her phone number. Also tellingly, we found a letter that was written by attorneys general across the United States to Meta because they had become so frustrated by the dramatic spike in complaints that they were demanding that the company do more. In the state of New York alone, the letter said, the Attorney's General Office received 783 complaints in 2023, and that was a tenfold increase from 2019.
Wow. Okay. A lot of people are getting caught up in this then. And it sounds like, of course, people have their personal accounts, but also business owners, as you mentioned, like their livelihood, I imagine, would be affected by not having access to your account.
Absolutely. They lose access to their customer base. They lose an avenue for sales. They've, relied on these accounts for engagement and customer growth. It's a big problem for small businesses, especially, I got the sense.
Yeah. So you just mentioned this situation with the attorneys general across the U.S., like getting so frustrated because there's so many situations where that people are losing access to their account. I guess the big question, Kathryn, is like, why is this happening? Why doesn't Meta have sufficient customer service capacity, I would imagine, to handle these kind of requests to have people's accounts reinstated?
So that is the big question. I spoke with several industry and policy experts who surmise that Meta just doesn't see this as a priority worthy of its resources. Their feeling is that it comes down to money and to market dominance. Meta doesn't prioritize addressing these requests in their view because the company just plain doesn't have to. It's the largest social media company in the world. Yeah. That being said, Brandon Garrett, who is a senior assistant attorney general in New Hampshire's Consumer Protection and Antitrust Bureau, he said it's a mystery, in his words, why the company wouldn't do a better job trying to maintain people's access to its own platforms. And his state was among the offices that signed the letter to Meta last year, which said, tellingly, quote, we refuse to operate as the customer service representatives of your company. Proper investment in response and mitigation is mandatory.
We'll be right back. So, Kathryn, you just said that Meta is the largest social media company in the world. Of course, lots of people are using their services, whether it be Instagram, Facebook, WhatsApp. This must affect a lot of people because of the scale of Meta. How big is it exactly?
It's enormous. It is the world's largest social media company. It has a market cap of $1.75 trillion US. It had 3.43 billion daily active users across its platform during the first quarter of this year on average, up from 3.35 billion the previous quarter. Its quarterly revenue was $42.3 billion US. And although the company offers paid subscription options in addition to providing free access to its platforms, it primarily makes money through ad sales. And so in the first quarter of this year, advertising accounted for nearly 98% of the company's revenues. And Meta had a global workforce of over 74,000 employees as of the end of last year, with offices in more than 90 cities around the world.
Okay, massive company, got a lot of people working for it too. How does the company respond to all of this, Kathryn? Like the situation of brokers and employees working out these deals on their own, how have they responded?
So in late 2022, as was first reported by the Wall Street Journal, Meta fired or disciplined employees and security contractors for allegedly abusing the internal account recovery mechanism, at times for bribes. But 3 years later, our reporting has shown that it's clear the problem persists and that the underground economy is thriving. And now our reporting also shows that the company is deploying a new legal strategy and is taking its fight against the broker insider arrangement to court.
Okay, so it seems like they're coming after these individuals who are kind of going this backdoor route to help users. Do we know specifically, I'm wondering about this broker Mo who helped out Bobby. Do we know what happened to him?
So Mo is Mohammed Ismail, and he's a Toronto area man listed in corporate documents as the director of digital marketing agency Smart Communications Canada, Inc. And so I should say here that he declined to speak with me for this story. And as it turns out, Meta sued Mr. Ismail in the Ontario Superior Court of Justice in 2023 for selling unauthorized account reinstatement services. He was accused of causing agents to, quote, misuse the internal Meta appeal channel by having them submit, quote, deceptive and misleading requests for reinstatements for paying customers. And it was clear from the court filings that Meta wasn't just looking to force him to stop selling account services. It was also looking to compel him to disclose the identities of his contacts within Meta. And the case was settled last year.
Okay, so it sounds like they were trying to use him to actually find other people who were involved in these schemes then, too.
Exactly. They were asking him to basically provide a list of everyone he had worked with.
And there's also another case in Ontario that actually involves a broker who was pretty young, like still a teenager when he was doing some of this stuff, right? What do we know about that situation?
This case was particularly intriguing for that reason and for a couple of others. So in 2019, Meta first set its sights on a 16-year-old high school student living with his parents in the small town of Shelburne, Ontario, which is a rural community south of Georgian Bay. So he was a 16-year-old high school student. He's living at home and he's starting to hear from Meta. So by the time this young man, Jacob Jones, was 17, he was receiving cease and desist letters demanding that he stop providing unauthorized Instagram account reinstatement services. And then the situation escalated. And in March of 2023, Meta filed a lawsuit against Mr. Jones in the Ontario Superior Court of Justice. And Meta thinks he made hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not more.
Wow.
And the case was interesting for all kinds of reasons, including because it gave a window through an affidavit into the sorts of investigations the company undertakes to find people who are violating their terms of use or community standards. Mr. Jones, for his part, declined to provide comment to the Globe.
I have to wonder, though, it really stands out to me that Meta has been so aggressively going after these brokers with lawsuits and all kinds of things here, instead of actually just solving the initial problem and helping people reinstate their accounts for free in the first place. Like, do we know why Meta wouldn't just direct its energy towards solving that initial problem?
So the experts that I've spoken with who spend their time thinking about stuff like this believe that this is a clear cost issue. And in the mind of Matt Malone, he's an assistant professor at the University of Ottawa Faculty of Law and also with the Canadian Internet Policy and Public Interest Clinic. He said it's also a matter of lack of incentive. He put it this way: we are at their whims. They have no reason to do better unless we force them to do better. So through that mindset, the thinking is they've got billions of users. If someone doesn't like their customer support, no one is forcing them to be on the platform.
Huh. But that's, I imagine, leaving a lot of people in really difficult situations then, as we've just been hearing in this conversation.
Right. And it's sort of hard to imagine how a business can function in this world without social media.
Yeah. Yeah. It's even for a personal level, right? It's very essential for almost anyone these days.
Absolutely. On personal level, professionally, absolutely.
What has Meta said about all of this, Kathryn?
So we put somewhere in the order of 30 specific and itemized questions to the company over the course of about 2 months. Our questions were not individually answered. For example, the company didn't answer the Globe's questions about the number of personnel worldwide that it is determined to be implicated in the broker inside arrangement, or about the estimated size of the underground economy. What the company did say is that the use and provision of unsanctioned account services goes against its policies, and that people who offer such services in partnership with Meta personnel are deploying deceptive practices and exploiting users. In a statement, their spokesperson, Julia Pereira, said, account recovery services are against our policies. They pose a risk to our users and are designed to circumvent enforcement of our terms of service and community standards. We work to improve security and consider all enforcement and legal options to protect people on our platforms.
I mean, like we mentioned before, it can be a pretty stressful and scary situation for someone to lose access to their accounts like this. Is there anything people can do to protect themselves and stop this from happening?
Yeah. So in addition to having, good passwords and not sharing them widely, there's two-factor authentication. And I'm often struck by how many people don't know about it or do know about it and don't realize that it's not turned on their very precious social media accounts and other accounts. So we spoke with 11 Instagram users who all got hacked or had their accounts disabled for a number of reasons, and none of them had two-factor authentication on. So that's effectively when you enable that function. If somebody is trying to sign into your account, you will get a notification. And in order to proceed with the sign in, you have to enter a one-time code that only you can see because it's been texted to you or emailed to you.
Okay. So that's something that people can do, at least an additional layer of protection then.
Let's just say everybody that I spoke with now has two-factor authentication.
Before we wrap up, Kathryn, I just want to go back to Bobby, who we talked about off the top. She initially got locked out of her account in 2022. She managed to pay someone to get it reinstated. Has she had any issues with her account since then?
Bobby has managed to maintain control over her account, which she's very happy about, largely in thanks to her paranoia after what happened a couple of years ago. But something weird happened this past May, just last month. She received an alarming direct message on Instagram, and it said, "Hello at Bobby Walks Dogs. We have received reports that you have violated our account rules. Please fill out the appeal form to review and appeal the reports." So she looks at the name on the account and sees that it says Meta. So at first glance, it looks legit. But then the handle is Meta Design Business HIH. It just didn't seem right. And then she scrolled up and she saw that there was a chat history of messages that she'd exchanged with a friend about visiting a farmer's market. Wow. So pretty quickly, she connected the dots and realized that the friend had been hacked, and now the hacker was fishing for their next victim. She wasn't going to make the same mistake again. So knowing that Miss Monks had been in touch with the Globe for this story, the friend asked to be connected with me. I guess she wanted answers and thought, I might be able to give some advice. Oh. So I get a text message a couple of weeks ago, and it says, quote, "None of the remedies on the Instagram/Meta support site work or accomplish anything. I don't know if you're still investigating or have any possible suggestions on how to recover the account, but I thought I would reach out."
Just the cycle continues.
Full circle.
Kathryn, thank you so much for your reporting and for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
That was Kathryn Blaze Baum, an investigative reporter for The Globe. That's it for today. I'm Menaka Raman-Wilms. Our producers are Madeline White, Michal Stein, and Ali Graham. David Crosby edits the show. Adrian Chung is our senior producer, and Matt Frainer is our managing editor. Thanks so much for listening, and I'll talk to you next week.